So we're going to go ahead and start with Adobe Illustrator. Illustrator is a program that is based off of vector graphics. And if you're unfamiliar what vector graphics are used to basically are graphics that you create within Illustrator that are mathematically based. So you can create logos that are going to scale to any size without losing any kind of quality. So we're going to start with the very basics of Adobe Illustrator and start to use a few tools that I'll introduce to you in this particular segment. So we're going to start out with Adobe Illustrator, and what you're seeing here is the Adobe Illustrator interface. This is what would start up once Adobe Illustrator starts. Unfortunately, I have some things in here that I can kind of work on, that I've been working on. It's my recent history. All right, so I'm going to start with a new file, and basically I'm going to just leave the settings as is. Settings within here, the sizes and stuff are not really entirely important, depending on what you want to create within your within Illustrator. So what are you looking at doing? You want to make it large enough that you can create certain things, but in all reality, a lot of the graphics you create in Illustrator are going to be scaled to any size throughout your career. So whatever size you want to start with is totally fine. So I'm going to go ahead and start with just these default settings, and I'm going to hit create. So it's going to start out with this particular area, which basically gives me a desktop. So the dark gray area is basically, thought of as kind of like your desktop space where you're actually placing things on. The white area refers to pretty much the paper that you're going to be drawing on in this particular instance. So this is what I'm going to have you guys do. So I actually use a tool called the pen tool. Pen tool is one of my favorite tools that I utilize on a daily basis. The pen tool is one of these love-hate tools that is used by people if they are use Illustrator and say I hate the pen tool. I look at it more or less that you don't understand the pen tool and you are refusing to really learn it. Because the pen tool is used in many other programs, including Photoshop and InDesign and in several other Adobe software. So I'm going to start with that, but before I do that, I'm going to have you guys do something for me. All right, so I'm going to go up to View up at the very top, and what I want you to do is scroll all the way down to the bottom where it says Show Grid. I'm going to have you hit Show Grid, and it's going to show these like gray and dark and light lines on your screen. I'm going to also go to View, and I'm going to go down to where it says Snap to Grid. So I'm going to choose that. Now, what I'm going to use is a pen tool, and you can see over here it's listed in the toolbox. And the way the Illustrator is set up is off to your left, you've got all your tools. Off to your right, you've got all the palettes that are being used in Illustrator. They are content sensitive, so they will change a lot depending on what tools you have chosen to utilize. All right, so I'm going to choose my pen tool. Now, before I move forward, there is a tool that looks like the pen tool underneath of that. This is called the curvature tool. We're not going to cover that right now. We will talk about that later, but right now it is not something I'm going to be focusing on. So I'm going to use the pen tool. So if I choose the pen tool and I move my tool over here, I'm going to zoom in using my Control plus. Control minus, Control plus will zoom in, Control minus will zoom out. I'm going to actually use this to zoom in. There are keyboard shortcuts. If you're using Mac, it is Command plus and Command minus. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to find intersection of two of these dark lines, and I'm going to click there. So when I click once and I let go of my mouse, you see that it just lays down a point and it has a line that kind of like follows you around within that space. Well, what I'm going to do is this is almost like a dot to dot tool. If you've done dot to dots in school, this is what it's kind of like, very close to that. So I'm going to move my cursor or my pen tool over to 1, 2, 3, 4 dark lines off to your right. And I'm going to click and I'll let go. And you'll see that what we placed on there is our first line. All right, so this is a line and what is often referred to as a stroke in Illustrator. So we're going to continue on, and I'm going to move my cursor down 1, 2, 3 spots, and I'm going to go over to your left 2, and then I'm going to lay down a point. Click. All right, so I now put in 3 points. And you'll notice that something also disappeared. In this middle here, you'll notice the grid is kind of like disappeared in that instance. All right, that is what is referred to as a fill. And currently it is set to white. The stroke is black. The basic area in the middle is white. So I'm going to basically finish this off. This is not as what referred to as a shape yet. So if I move my cursor up to this point up here, I'm going to close it. That's gonna, if I click on the point that I started with, that is gonna close the shape. So I'm gonna close that, and you'll see that you have a closed shape in here. Now, we're not finished with this yet. All right, I want to go ahead and let's say I love the pen tool, I love Illustrator in the sense like anything you put down, anything you draw is not set in stone. It can be modified, it can be changed, it can be morphed, it can be modeled, it can do all this kind of stuff, and it will never be permanent. So what I want to do is you'll notice each of these points here, these 3 points, actually refer to or make this a shape. But what if I wanted to add more points to it? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move my cursor up towards a line, and you'll notice that it has a plus sign to the right of the cursor. And you'll notice that plus sign is referring to basically adding an anchor point. If I go ahead and click on it, you'll see that it did add a point. And if I move my cursor on top of that point, you'll notice a minus sign show up. That minus sign is referring to taking out a point. Well, we don't want to do that. So I'm going to move my cursor over to this next dark line on top, and I'm going to click there, and I'm going to go ahead and click there. All right, so I've added 3 more points to my top of my shape here. But we're not done yet. I want to go ahead and I want to manipulate these points. I want to be able to tell them where they need to be and what shape they're going to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to a different tool. If you notice over here on the left, you have this black arrow and you'll have this white arrow. Black arrow is basically a selection tool, and it refers to selecting whole shapes. The white arrow is called a direct selection tool, which is often referred to choosing parts of a shape. So if I want to manipulate points, I'm going to use my direct selection tool, which is the white arrow. And I'm going to move my white arrow over here, and you'll notice that if you probably won't be able to see it much, but if you'll notice that there are some points in here where it looks like there's a little white speckle in there, that refers to as that is an open shape, or open point, not a selected point. This one is a dark filled in point here. That means it is currently selected. But you can select any point you want simply by moving your cursor over to it and clicking on it. That is selecting just that point. And I'm going to move this up to the next dark line. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to click, hold, and drag up there. All right. Now, I'm going to manipulate these points. I'm going to manipulate them to the point where I'm actually going to create them as curves. Because you notice right now it's set to where each point or each line is a very straight. very straight, to the point, and we don't really want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my pen tool, and I'm going to click and hold on that. And you'll notice that in there is a tool called the anchor point tool. And the anchor point tool is what I'm going to actually utilize for this particular portion of it. So I'm going to choose my anchor point tool. I'm going to move over here to this point right here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click, hold, and drag all the way until I got about 2 small boxes away from a dark line. Now, if you're doing that, great, but notice which way I'm pulling. If I were to pull the other direction, you'll see that it did not it. Now, why is that? Well, the reason is actually very simple. Think about which direction did I draw the shape initially? Did I draw it in a counterclockwise direction, or did I draw it in a clockwise direction? Since I drew it in a clockwise direction, I need to pull in the area in the direction of the clockwise direction. So that's why if I'm going to make a curve like this, I'm going to pull in the direction that I drew the shape at. If I would have drew the shape at a counterclockwise direction, then I would have had to pull the other way. So I'm going to choose that. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to click, hold, and drag till about 2 small boxes away from a dark line. Great, we're getting there. So we have these 2 curves that we want. We want to work with a little bit more of these down here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose this and I'm going to make it about 3 dark lines down. Now, if I let go, you'll notice that it doesn't curve as well as I had hoped. All right, kind of like curves down, which this is okay. This is nice. But when it gets down here, it makes a stark direction towards this point. I want to curve this a little bit more, but I don't want to manipulate this one. That is what these handles are for. These are called Bezier handles, and they are used to manipulate the curves on each side of those points. So if I want to modify this curve here, I just simply go to this handle, click, hold, and drag down till I'm about 1 small box away from a dark line. I'm going to do the same thing up here. Remember, I have to pull up 3 small boxes. And then I can go down to this point and pull down till about 1. And there we are. If you have any idea what we're creating, sure hope you do by now. So we've got a little bit of a heart here. So what I want to do now is I want to, it looks good so far, it looks great, but I wanted to actually create more of a curve down here, like come down to a point. Right now it just kind of like abruptly ends. And I want to create more of a point. So I'm going to zoom in. And I'm going to come down here. And I'm going to click, hold, and drag this down. Now, if you notice here, I'm dragging down like 5 small boxes down. But I'm also going to go over to my left 1. Alright. Now, this seems to be a problem. It's like, okay, well, why does it come down like this? What if I wanted to have it come down to a point? Well, when it comes down to this point, this harm is kind of like modified where the point where here it creates this small little curve up. But I don't want that. I want it to come down to a point. Well, again, remember, these handles can work independently before or after the point. So like this handle here controls this curve. So if I want to actually manipulate that curve, I simply grab that handle and I can pull up till this creates like a more of a V-shaped pattern with the handles. And there I am. I've got this kind of like point that kind of comes down there. All right. So what I'm going to do is I want to go ahead and this looks good, but I want to move this point up a little bit. So I'm going to take this point here and I'm going to just shift it up about 3 small boxes up. Or let's try 4. There we go. And there you have it. You have a perfect heart. But we're not done yet. So what if we wanted to go ahead and add some color to this? Well, one of the easiest ways to do that is right now, remember you have 2 elements in this particular shape. Now notice that when I went to my black arrow and I clicked on the shape, you'll notice that there's this box that showed up with all these little handles. All right, those are manipulation handles. If I want to go ahead and rotate it, I simply move my cursor outside and rotate it. I can go ahead and scale it if I want to. I can do whatever I want as far as manipulating goes, but we're not going to talk about that just yet. All right, so I'm going to add some color to this. So I'm going to go over to my left toolbox, and you'll notice that there is a fill and a stroke swatch box here. So right now it's set to white. The stroke is set to black. Now, how do I go ahead and change that? Well, if I want my fill to change to something, let's say red, I'll go ahead and double click on it, and you'll get this color picker. Now, we're going to talk more about this color picker later on, but what we want to concentrate on is this particular area here, where you can choose your colors. Here's a swatch element here. You can choose whatever color or hue that you want to use, and then you have to go choose that color in the area, in this area here. And you'll notice it will show up there, and if you see, it'll also show up in your shape. Once you're done, you can go ahead and hit OK, and you'll see that it changed to red. Now, if you want to change the stroke color, you simply choose that first so it looks like this is overlaying the fill, and double click it. And then you can change anything in here. Let's say we go with something a little bit more orangey, I guess. Choose that orange, hit OK, and you got an orange stroker on here. Now, what if you wanted to make the stroke a little bit thicker? If you go over to your right, you'll see that there's an option for stroke and fill. Stroke next to the right of stroke, you have this option to go ahead and increase the shape size, or the stroke size. All right. So now you've created a heart. Congratulations. All right, but what we're gonna concentrate on is the pen tool is one of these tools that you can use and you can create shapes and build from them. Now, for your first exercise, what we're going to do is we're going to actually work on an exercise here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up my file here. Forgive me for the elements I have here. But what I want to do is I want to go ahead and work on this. So I'm going to open up this shape here. This is what we're going to have initially set up for you in the class elements for your first exercise. All right, so to explain what you're going to be doing for this first exercise, I want you to get used to the pen tool. Now, I'm going to use it, but you'll notice over here in the toolbox, when I just went through this, I was just on the anchor point tool. I need to change that. Oftentimes, students will get intermixed with this particular curvature tool and not the anchor point tool. So you're going to choose on anchor point and you're going to choose the pen tool. Okay, you have to use the pen tool here. And what I want you to do is I want you to redraw this particular graphic. Now, what I usually do is I start out here in a point that actually will have a pretty stark directive element. So if I choose that or click there, I'm going to simply draw, and you'll notice here I can draw my points one by one as I'm going through. Now, you'll notice here, I've been doing this for 20-some years, so I make it look a little bit easy. But you'll notice I'm not laying point. I'm always looking at changes of direction. And I go around my tree here, as so. But I'm going to show you a little problem area that kind of comes into play here right about now. You'll notice that this white, or what is called a fill, is now covering what I want to trace. Now, if I go move my cursor over here, you'll got the fill and the stroke. If I make sure the fill is in front and I go down here where there's a red slash. I'm going to choose the red slash, and what that did was made my fill disappear. And then I can continue working on filling in this area here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and work on this a little bit more. Kind of like speed up a little bit. All right, so we're going to go around this. Yeah, I am just absolutely don't want you guys to do that bad of a job. Like you spend a little bit more time than I am. Just trying to get you guys started on this particular exercise. But I'm going to go all the way around the tree until I get to the very first point. And at that point, then I can go ahead and double click on the fill. Choose a color. Doesn't matter what color. And then I'm going to turn my stroke off. So I have a tree like that. Now, here's where some of the problem comes into play. I always have students who do this. For the other blocks here, we're going to go ahead and go all the way around. I have some students who go ahead and retrace the tree, and I'm going to say, don't do that. Instead, cross over the tree. Go all the way through, just pretending the trees are not even there, and go all the way around. It's like so. Double click. I'm going to give it a different color. But you'll notice that it's covering the tree. Easy, 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 or easy peasy. So I'm going to choose this particular shape. I'm going to go up to Object, Arrange, Send to Back. And you'll notice that what it did was it just sent that to the back. All right. So what you're going to do, again, with some of these other areas, you'll notice that there are some areas here that kind of like form as shadows. You don't have to retrace everything, because I like to just go ahead and skip that. And then I will go ahead and arrange, send to back. And then go ahead and work on other shapes. Maybe change this color, something different. And do the same thing here. Okay, I'll make this one a little bit lighter. And I'm going to arrange, send to back. Okay. So there you go. That is your first exercise. You're going to go ahead and create that or retrace that. Now, for some of you advanced users, you can go ahead and choose the car. If you want to go ahead and challenge yourself to go ahead and create that car, but not necessary if you don't want to. All right, so back to this. Now, of course, you want to be able to save it to upload to e-learning. So I'm going to go up to File, Save As, and save it in computer. And we're going to go, for me, I'm going to save it to my desktop. And I'm going to change it to Adobe PDF. And you're going to leave it at that name and hit Save. And when this pops up here, go ahead and hit Save PDF. All right. And that will be about it. So that concludes what we're going to start with for this particular segment. Hopefully that kind of helped you, and we can kind of like move on from here. All right. Till next time, see you then.